back to the backcountry cuisine, and today we're going to do something a little different. We are going to make this cheddar broccoli soup. I found this at my local Albertsons store. It's from Shore Lunch, and I wanted to try it out and see if it was any good. So it says made from scratch quality, so it's got to be good, right? We'll see. Anyways, we're going to do this little soup mix, and I'm obviously not going to make this whole package. It'd be a huge amount. And so I dumped it all out and measured it back in, and I found it was a little over 5 cups, 5 1/4 cups maybe, something like that. And it called for 8 cups of water for all of this. And so what I decided to do was put a 1/2 cup of this soup mix, a 1/4 cup of my own broccoli, my own dried broccoli, a 1/4 cup of the some ham. So I take deli ham, or the kind of sandwich slices ham, and I cut them into strips and I dry those, and they do great. You could also use, if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you could use hamish bits or some other protein source from Harmony House. They do great. They've got really good stuff there. But I decided to bulk that up, and then I'll use 2 cups of water. So that should make a nice thick soup, is my hope. So we'll check it out and see how that goes. Okay, so let's get this all fired up. I'm going to be using 2 cups of water in the end. So I know that I found about 1 cup to 1/4 ounce of alcohol works really well with this flat cut stove. And I always add a little bit more, especially with this soup, because I'm going to simmer it for a little bit. So I'm going to put in 1/2 ounce plus another 1/4 ounce, because I just want to make sure there's enough fuel in there. Should be plenty now for what I'm going to do. And then when I am mixing this, anytime I've got this kind of powdered mix, I have discovered that it is way better to use a small amount of water first and make it into a thick paste, and then you can add the rest of the water in. Otherwise the powder tends to clump up and it's never as good. At least you're kind of eating some sort of clumpy something or other, and that's not tasty. I'm going to put in about a 1/2 cup of water. And now some people ask, well, how do you know how much water to put in? You know, a lot of bottles have measuring units on it, and if they don't, well, because I use these cheapy water containers or soda containers or whatever, I make my own marks. So I just use a measuring cup from my kitchen, and I put in a 1/2 cup, and then I pour that in and mark it, and then another 1/2 cup, and another 1/2 cup, another 1/2 cup. This is exactly a 2-cup container, so I filled it all the way to the top. But I'll put in about a 1/2 cup in here, and then mix it up. And it's going to be way too thick, but that helps to mix it better and get that powder to break up and not just be lumps in the water. Actually looking pretty good already. Could even use less water, but because I have the broccoli and the ham in there, that also helps to break up those little bits of powder pockets. Okay, now I can add the rest of the water in. That really fills my cup up.
Quite well. And let's light the stove and get it going. There you go.
Alright, we'll let that go. It's going to take about 8 to 10 minutes to heat up. Well, I just had something fun happen. Not really, just joking. So one of the things, especially when you're this full and having this kind of material, this milky, cheesy kind of thing, boil overs can happen. So I've been checking it. It was getting hot. I'm like, well, I should probably go to simmer ring soon. All of a sudden it boiled right over, and this is going to be hot, but oh yeah, I got a huge freaking mess here. So note to self, when you see it steaming, check on it. When you see it steaming, take it off the heat and then just put it in your cozy. So I'm not even going to simmer this thing. I'm just going to put it straight in the cozy and let it finish there. So I'm gonna let that go for 10 minutes, and while that's going, I'm gonna clean up my big mess. Alright, so I got myself all cleaned up, and it's been pretty close to 10 minutes. I thought I would just take a couple minutes to talk about, well, what do you do if your pot boils over and makes a big mess? And first thing is prevention, of course, trying to prevent that from happening. Anytime you have your pot near full, where it's really close to the rim, you should be extra attentive and careful about it. It's easier for it to spill over, and it's easier for it to boil over. Then the second thing to do is that as you're heating it up and as it's getting closer to a boil, if you've got food in it, this is assuming you've got food in it, as it's getting closer to a boil, really monitor that heat. And when you see that it's nice and hot and it's steaming well, then you don't have to bring it to a full boil. You can put it straight into the cozy and right from there, and just give it a little extra time. So maybe you don't bring it to a full boil, but you can let it sit there for 12 minutes or something like that, 12, 14, 15 minutes, and it'll cook plenty fine. It'll cook great. In some ways it's better because you won't get any of that burning or scorching at all. And the other thing to do is to, as you get closer, as you can see that steam coming off, you can just take the lid off, and then you can really monitor it better. It doesn't tend to have that quick boil over quite as much when you leave the lid off. So any of those techniques will work pretty well. And what do you do when you make a big mess like that? Well, it's not great. And there's just no other way around it. One of the problems of cooking in camp is that you can get a big mess like that, and then you've got a lot of food that's going to attract animals. So it's always better to eat away from camp, or at least away from where you're going to sleep, and then really try to prevent those boilovers. Okay, well, let's check this out. Let's see how this meal finished up in the end. See, that cozy keeps it nice and hot. And it looks like a great soup in here. Let's see how my ham is. I may need to give it some more time, I was hoping to let it sit for a little bit. Can't get a piece of ham out. Come on, there we go. I mean, it's pretty good. I can probably go for a little bit longer. So I'm going to let it sit for another 2-3 minutes and see if that ham softens up. I mean, you could totally eat it now, but give it a couple minutes. Alright, it's been a couple more minutes. Let's give this another try. I'm sure it's going to be good now, so. Alright, well, it's pretty liquidy. Again, I usually just eat it right out of the cozy, but to help show. Oh, this is going to make a big mess. So I think I might just have to show it right out of the pot here. But everything looks great in here. The broccoli looks totally rehydrated. You could use less water. You could definitely use less water if you wanted a thicker, stewier kind of meal. But you do increase your chances of scorching on the bottom. Yeah, it's good. Ham still has a little bit of a chewy texture, but it's really tasty. So, once again, this is Shore Lunch, cheddar broccoli, and soup mix. I got it at Albertsons around my town. I did a half cup of the powdered material, quarter cup of the broccoli, a quarter cup of dried ham, and then 2 cups of water. So, hope that was informative for you, and get out there and get on the trail and eat well. Take care.